everyone. I wanted to go over very quickly what you should have picked up in the formatting errors assignment and make sure that you're all feeling super confident about exactly how to set up your papers for your APA literature review. So on the left hand side of my screen I have the original document that you all reviewed, and on the right side of my screen I have the Word document where I'm going to go ahead and edit so that you can see the corrections. So let's start with what a lot of you notice, which is the page number. I'm going to go ahead and as I talk, I'm going to go ahead and insert the header that needs to be here. And I'm giving you guys options this quarter for how exactly you want to format your APA paper. I recommend that you get in the habit now of learning how to write in the professional style, but if you don't really want to, you can leave out the running head, but you can't leave out the page number. So I'm going to go ahead and do it in the formal style because I think that's what you should be focusing on. And so the first thing that should be in your header is the shortened version of the title. And so this is a complaint that you might not have come up with when you were doing your evaluations of this paper, but this student wrote a very short title that was not very specific, right? Autism spectrum disorder. That's a running head. That's not a title. Like, this title on your paper should give the reader a hint about what the paper is going to be about. Now, obviously this paper is about autism, but it's about a subset of the factors that are important in autism spectrum disorder. So think about a title for your paper that is descriptive enough that it actually is a title, not a running head. So I'm going to go ahead and just use autism spectrum disorder as a running head because that's really what it is. Now, the rules on a running head are that it can be no longer than 50 characters, and that includes spaces and punctuation. All that counts. And so you need something that's shortened. So autism spectrum disorder fits perfectly in that criterion. Now I'm going to tab over, and then I'm going to go over here to this little drop-down menu that says page number, and I'm going to select current position, and I just want a plain number. Most of you notice that the Word page doesn't belong there, that little vertical line that's there doesn't belong there, that horizontal line doesn't belong there, like none of that belongs there. So it should just be plain regular text. Now when you're setting it up, make sure that you also change the font to be Times New Roman 12 because the font should be the same throughout the entire paper. And then the other thing that you want to make sure that you have set in your running head is the margin. Oops, I got to go down here to edit header. There we go. Because the APA style requires a 1-inch margin all the way around. So if you can see, I'm over here clicking to get a 1-inch margin at the top. Now notice that the writing, the autism spectrum disorder, and the page number are right on top of that dotted line. So that means that there is no blank line after it. So you have to hit your enter button to get a blank line to appear. Now I'm going to double click the body of the paper to get out of that editing format, and now I've got my running head, and now it'll follow me throughout the entire paper. So it'll always look like this, and by selecting page number, rather than typing the number 1 there, by selecting that page number, it'll automatically number the pages as you write. Okay, now the next thing that a lot of you picked up on is the position of the title on the page. Now you'll notice I have my rulers set up so you can see them on my page. You can do that by going to your view button and then making sure that you have, I think I might have to make it bigger, have this little button here, this box that says ruler, that needs to be checked. And then you'll be able to see the rulers on the left and on the right side of the page, at the left and the top side of the page. So you'll notice as you go down this left-hand ruler, I'm down at about 3 inches below the header, which is about 1/3 of the way down the page. So that's the perfect spot to go. And then I'm going to just go ahead and model for you. A lot of these things I'm used to clicking on aren't visible if I have too small of a screen. I'm going to model for you a couple of things about this title and author and all that. In APA 7, they have changed one little bit about how the title page looks, and that is how the title is actually highlighted and made more prominent. So I'm going to give a slightly better title, just slightly better in the sense that I haven't really planned this out. So now that I've got a word written, I'm going to go ahead and select Times New Roman 12, and I'm going to go ahead and do the double spacing so that going forward I don't have to worry about this ever again. So I'm going to say factors contributing to, I can't remember what this paper is about, autism spectrum disorder. That's slightly better. It's not great, it's slightly better. So now one big change in APA 7 is that we are going to boldface this title, and we're going to have 2 returns after it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the returns first, because otherwise it's hard to stop the bolding. So now I'm going to go up here, I'm going to bold the title, and then I go down here, and now is where I can type my name. Now I wanted to mask who actually had written the paper, so I called it sample student paper. I'm going to give our sample student a name this time. I'm a good student. There we go. That's our student, our author's name. And then this paper had been submitted to Bellevue College. They have the equivalent course, and so I used a student paper from that because it was the right length and it had some errors on it that were really good to highlight. But you guys should all be typing Eastern Washington University here. And this is what everyone's title page should look like. Like I said, it's up to you. If you don't want to use a running head, I understand. You don't have to do that. But you do have to have a page number. It has to appear on every page, and it needs to be 1 inch down from the margin, and then you need to have about 1/3 down the page your bold-faced title with the main words capitalized. Then you need to have a blank extra space there before your name, and then everybody's affiliation is Eastern Washington University. Now here's a really big tip that a lot of students don't know. To go to the next page, you hold down the control. Now see, if you have an Apple, I think it's the command button, but if you have a PC, you hold down the control button, then hit the enter button, and that starts a new page for you. Now because I was already centered, it's doing automatic centering on page 2, so that's really handy, because now I'm going to just go back to page 1. I'm going to copy, and then I'm going to paste my title at the first line of page 2. So that's how you get set up for page 2. Every page 2 should have the title centered here. Now the logic on that is that in the olden days, when we used to submit actual paper manuscripts to journals for review, and some teachers would even do this process where you can then now remove the title page and not have the student's name or the submitter's name on it, and instead the reader starts on page 2. And so in a typical paper, page 2 would actually contain the abstract. We're not doing an abstract for this paper because the paper is so short and it doesn't have a method in it, and there's no need for an abstract. So we're going to just start with writing on page 2. But for a research paper that's submitted to a journal in a manuscript form, you can imagine ripping off that title page, and then the reader would start with this title as their hint about what it's about. Every page within the manuscript would have this running head and a page number, because if you can imagine a reviewer sitting outside in the sunshine reviewing a manuscript, a gust of wind blows away the pages, they got to go gather it back up. Having everything numbered makes it really super easy. Let's say that they're reviewing 2 manuscripts at the same time and they both blew away. You can put one manuscript back together based on its running head versus the other manuscript with its different running head. So that's why it's important to have some specificity in your title and some specificity in your running head, so that it really can stand on its own. It helps people to organize and stuff like that. The other thing about the running head is that this is what will appear at the top of the each page in the journal when it gets published. And so you kind of have a little bit, as the author, control over what goes at the top of your article as people are reading it. And so you kind of want to have them in the right frame of mind. So if you're going to do a running head, put a little bit of thought into it. All right, so I went down to page 2 on my version and forgot to show you that the author had forgotten the title being centered on page 2. It's the exact same format as it is on page 1. So you bring down that bolding, you bring down all those letters being capitalized in the main words, and so on. Now we have. Really, I had only asked you to look at APA format, and so some of you went above and beyond and looked at citation styles, the formatting of the references, which was actually Project 3, so I wasn't expecting you guys to look at that stuff. Just to give you a little bit of a window into it, if a person were to include direct references, this is in fact the correct format for doing it. So that is a correct citation. You do not put initials for the authors. You do not put first names or affiliations when you're citing somebody. So those are things that you might or might not picked up on. I didn't ask you to look at that for the purposes of this. I just wanted you to look at the formatting. So as we scroll through here, and this paper is longer than the one that you guys need to write. You guys only need to have 5 references, and you only need to have 2 to 3 pages. Like it needs to be longer than 2 pages, and it doesn't need to be longer than 3. I oftentimes get questions about, can it be longer than 3? Yes, it can be. It just doesn't need to be. So my requirements are just based on what needs to be there. When we get to page 7, that's where we find their references. We're going to pretend like I'm there on mine also. So for the reference page, this is actually correctly formatted. All you need is the word references centered in the middle. It's not works cited. It's not, I've seen a lot of different versions of what people put here. It's just the word references in boldface because it's a level 1 header. And then the visual of how these are made is correct. Like this is right, that you're supposed to have this hanging indent. There's only supposed to be double spacing throughout. And there is supposed to be double spacing throughout. Like some students will try and make it look more organized by doing like single spacing within a reference and then double spacing between references. That's wrong. What highlights the reference list is that you've got this hanging indent. And I've shown you in a couple of different videos how to make the hanging indent on a PC at least, so I won't bore you with that again. But that's all I was actually expecting you to look at, was the page numbers, the word references centered on the final page, the title being centered on page 2, and then there were some glaring errors on the title page. And so those are really, when I say I'm going to be grading you on APA format, these are the elements that I'll be looking for. Your header, your title in 2 places correctly formatted with the main words capitalized, the presence of your name and your affiliation and nothing else on this title page. I've had students go to the OWL website and see that there are other elements that can be required of students. If I didn't ask for it, I don't want it. That's considered wrong if you went to some other source and used their requirements rather than using mine. Like faculty have the right to say, I'm going to implement these parts of APA style. And what I'm trying to implement is what you need for professional or professional looking writing going forward. Like you don't need those things that are part of a student paper in order to write correctly in graduate school or to write a manuscript or something like that. So that's why I'm focusing just on those things that are static across all of APA writing. All right, well, hopefully that helps to clear it up, that this is all I'm looking for when I am looking for your format. You know, your title page looking like this, page 2 having that title centered in the center, first line, and then your reference page having this. Hopefully that little control enter or command enter gave you a little hint on how to keep your stuff together the way that you want it. Don't force it with just a bunch of enters because it'll lose its formatting when it gets to me. So use your control enter to force a new page, or use page break. That's another, there's something that you can click on that'll make a page break. I don't ever use that. So, all right, well, hopefully that helps to explain what I was looking for and what you needed to be looking for a correctly formatted APA paper. All right, thanks for listening.